Welcome back to the Gardening with Joy and Holly radio show. Thank you for choosing us to be a part of your day just for a little bit. Miss any of those coupon codes or want to find out more about those companies that support the program to allow it to bring to your ears each and every week through podcast, in-studio video replay, or radio? You can do that through our parent website, thewisconsinvegetablegardener.com, underneath the Money tab and the Season 9 tab at the top of the page. Well, Holly, bees, it doesn't take, it's a yearly conversation through certain media outlets about bees and how we're losing bees and how bad things will be if we don't have the bees. And the story is just a doom story, and we're going to talk about that.
Yeah. You're right. It is kind of a doom story. It's never like,
guess what?
Things are getting better. It doesn't seem like it, at least. So, there's different threats to bee health. The biggest one, it seems, is pesticides. And it's not...
But pesticides are never going to go away.
Right. That's the thing. Pesticides are never going to go away. So we can talk about, the threats to bee health, which we will, but also what people can do to help support the bees, support the pollinators, etc. So pesticides is one. There are different pathogens, whether they be bacterial, fungal, or viral.
There are some pesticides that are less lethal or are more natural, and it's not glyphosate. They're more vinegar based in order to do what you want it to do, but not on the strongest level as the top of the line weed killers can do.
Right. So anyway, the pathogens, the bacterial, fungal, etc., those are viruses, and sometimes they're just unavoidable and they can spread to colonies. So that's why it's important to focus on things that we can do for the bees. Then there's also poor nutrition, because bees do need a diverse range of pollen options. And as people don't grow more variety, this reduces their options for
variety, meaning different types of flowers.
Different types of flowers. Or like, say you only grow a certain type of flower because you want this pristine looking
daylilies. I only like daylilies.
Right. Yeah. As opposed to growing a variety of flowers,
daffodils and roses and
or like
tulips,
or maybe like in your back area of your garden that you don't want to look pristine.
Wildflowers.
You grow like a wildflower mix. Those are important, as the wildflowers. Even just different types of plants to kind of get the bees into your garden, whether it be the wildflowers, whether it be different vegetables. It's something that's important because it allows for the bees options for the pollen.
Now, I hear this, I don't want to get stung by the bees. I would plant flowers to get bees in, but I don't want to deal with, having them attack me when I'm in the garden.
Right.
Designate a certain area.
Exactly.
That the back, whatever portion, that's all going to be flowers. You're never going to go back there. Once you plant it, you're going to walk away and forget about it. Nobody's going to go back there, but it's nice to look at as the different flowers bloom at different times.
You could even, create like a natural wall type of thing. Native plants are very important as well. Another problem for the bees is habitat loss. So a lot of people have this misconception that bees all create like honeycombs or have a honeycomb.
Like you see in the cartoons.
Well,
I mean, that's where a lot of this comes from if you don't do your research.
Right. So there are different bee habitat kits you can purchase. I've even seen them at big box stores. You can make your own for like the mason bees, where you drill holes
in a piece of wood.
Yeah. So that's another thing.
And also, a lot of bees do not live like in a hive. They live in the ground.
Yeah,
too.
They live in the ground. So they don't all have a hive. And if that kind of freaks you out, you could always, again, build a habitat and put that in the back portion of your yard. But for the most part, bees are going to leave you alone. They don't want...
Unless you go in there and start swatting and
right.
At them, then they're going to start attacking.
And surprisingly, wasps, even though, a lot of people don't like wasps, obviously, like, you don't want a wasp colony, like, right next to your house.
Right.
But wasps are not, they're very important as well to the ecosystem.
Right.
So
certain wasps. There's, what is it, the killing wasp, or what is I forget what it is. that come from Africa.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I'm talking about. I can't think of it. Somebody's saying it right now.
Right.
Anyway, go ahead.
Anyway, let's focus on the friendly bees. So wasps, if you see a wasp, obviously if there's a wasp nest like underneath your porch and you have small children, you don't want to get stung. That's fair. I get that. But if there's a wasp nest and it's like far away from your property or from your home or whatever, and it's just there minding its own business, then let it be. Intensive farming practices,
also known as murder hornets.
Murder hornets. There you go. Intensive farming practices. There's not a lot you can do to control that.
Meaning traditional big ag industry, rows, corn, soybeans, wheat, repeat, spray. That's what you're referring to.
Like where you came from.
Right, yeah.
Right.
The heartland of America.
Right.
Yeah.
And there's not a lot we can do about that.
No, that's the way of life. That's the way it's been for fill in the blank, and it's not changing.
Right. And no judgment. It's just, that's why it's important to help aid the pollinators. So those are some of the issues that we're facing. So the way to kind of help them is, if you are a beekeeper, if you have the ability to beekeep, even if it's just a small little hive.
Check with your municipality. There are certain rules that certain cities allow you to have a certain number of hives, so many feet off adjacent properties, but you have to do all of it legally for this to work correctly. This is not one of those, well, I'll do it, nobody will find out. Somebody will find out, or somebody will get hurt, and then you've got issues. So
you might think, okay, I'm not doing that, which is fair. But if you've ever been on the fence and you're like, I know I could have a hive, I know I could do this.
I think it'd be pretty fun.
It would be fun. I would do it.
There's classes you can take.
Right.
But also there's ways you have to overwinter the hive based on your climate area, making sure they have enough honey and all this. You can produce a lot of honey on just a few hives. But the other thing is there has to be the ability for those bees to find pollen in order to create honey. Right.
So that's true. But if you are a hive owner, hiver, hive keeper, beekeeper, it is good to stay educated about these problems like the virals, the funguses, the bacterias, to make sure you're not allowing that into your hive and having it cause problems. So you want to make sure you do inspect your hives for disease, infestation, and make sure you have the best management practices. So, and there's different organizations that can provide this continuing, ongoing education to you as a beekeeper. Reducing pesticide use. Again, pesticides are not going to disappear. It's how you have to live with them. Or what you use on your property. If you're spraying, and we talk about this all the time, so you're tired of hearing it, if you spray dandelions in the spring, as soon as they come up, because you don't want to see the dandelion seeds can fly hundreds of miles, or at least 5 plus. You're never going to get rid of them. So you spray them, they start dying. The bees see, go get some pollen. They bring that chemical back to the hive, wherever their hive is, whatever kind of bee it is, and it's detrimental to that whole organization, ecosystem, the species. Absolutely. Dandelions last like 2 weeks. Everybody's got them. Be mad about it. And then move on with your life. Right. Our municipality does nothing for the dandelions. What is it? It's the medium. Median, yeah. And there's thousands and thousands. And then they let them grow. Yeah. They let them blossom. And then once they start going to seed, they'll mow. Yeah. They don't go in there beforehand. We live in a very, I don't know what you want to call it. Pritzy? Kind of hoity-toity area, and they just let those dandelions, they let those suckers grow, and I'm like, yes, let the dandelions grow. So that's awesome. And so if you do live in an area where maybe you can say something to your very local government and say, let's keep the dandelions. That's what city hall meetings are for. Exactly. That's why you sign up, so you can talk. You can go to those. That's called democracy, is it not? Yes. Yep. There's also different initiatives like No Mow May. Yeah. I know we're past May at this point, but you can put in your calendar for next year. I know. Well, shoot, you can just leave a little area in your backyard and not mow it at all. Turn a little to you'll be amazed at what kind of insects come whenever let's just say 4x4 foot section. Let it go and never even touch it. The amount of weeds and grasses come up, what kind of wildlife, even that little patch, butterflies and insects you've never seen before, migrate and find that and live there in habitat. I had a friend who had some landscaping done, And instead of having the non-native plants planted, she paid a little bit more and had the native plants planted. And she said it's unbelievable how many pollinators, butterflies, bees, etc. she gets there versus her neighbors.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's just, if you enjoy sitting outside watching the nature, it's worth it.
You can get one of those netted tent things, and it's all screened in. Sit there and watch. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. The netting is good. And then again, just planting a variety of plants, wildflowers, different vegetables, different flowers. Keep native plants if you can do that. Perennials are helpful. And in the early spring, make sure you're not digging up, clearing out the debris right away. That's a home for many insects and different pollinators.
Yeah, because we get in the early portion of the spring and later in the fall. We get in the early portion of the spring. Oh, it's warm. It's 380-degree days. We got to clean the garden. And then it goes like 2 weeks of like 35 and snow. And then all of a sudden, but you've cleaned all that out. You've killed all those eggs and all that over. And the same thing in the fall. You don't need to wipe your garden clean. We leave basically everything alone, and we walk away from it. We harvest. Diseased plants we'll get rid of, but if you have corn stalks, if you have vines, let it be, because you're not aware of the type of bugs that live in there. They're so small that we can't even see them with the naked eye in some instances, the microbes and all this stuff. Let it be. You may not think it's pleasing or it's not pretty. It would greatly change how your backyard ecosystem functions in the years to come. Well, summer is in full swing, Holly. Now we're not looking back. I think we've overcome that hill. And the nasty Japanese beetles are here and ready to wreak havoc on anything that you have on your property.
If you're looking to successfully control beetles without damaging the environment, look no further than Beetle Gone from Phylum Bioproducts. Derived from a naturally occurring soil bacteria, Beetle Gone is the only organic solution that successfully controls beetle invaders. Just mix the powder with water and spray on your plants. Once ingested, the target pests will stop feeding and die. And since it's an organic BT product, you know it's a great choice to use on your fruits and veggies in addition to your ornamental flowers and trees.
Not only does Beetle Gone work, the best part about the product is that it's safe to be used around, just like we're talking about, those beneficial insects, those ladybugs, those butterflies, those bees, and has no water toxicity. Go to BeetleGone.com to find out more. Also, you can go to Phylum Bioproducts, PHYLLOM Bioproducts.com.